Hi guys, we're going to do an infinity scarf using this this purple straight loom. Now the one I have, I am missing a couple pegs. I could take pegs off of my yellow nifty knitter and put them here if I wanted. But for the pattern I'm going to do, we're actually only going to use one side of this loom, so I don't need to worry about those pegs missing. What we're also going to do is use 2 strands of worsted weight yarn. These are Red Heart brands, and they're just a normal weight of 4, and I'm going to use this one. I believe this is called a coral, and then this is just a dark navy blue. Now the reason they look different than normal is because I have used my yarn ball winder to make them what's called yarn cakes, so they lay a little flatter, and I will be doing a video about that yarn ball winder in this as well. So what this will do is allow me to pull both strands up from the middle and work with them continuously. So go ahead and get your your purple straight loom, and I'm going to be casting on 18 pegs, so like I said, one side of it, but if you have another straight loom you can pretty much do the same idea that we'll be doing here. So go ahead and get ready. So right here we have our 2 strands of worsted weight yarn, and we're going to just cast on using the E-wrap method that I usually use in my videos. However, you can start with a different cast on if you want. I like to try keeping things simple, because there's a lot you can do with just knowing a few simple steps. We're going to make our slip knot. Oops, let's try that again. Really? Let's try this one more time. Guess it's been a while since I made a slip knot. There we go. And we're going to cast on, like I said, 1 row, so it's going to be 18 pegs. Now you can choose whether you want to hold the loose strands here and work them in, or just let them dangle and work them in later. I'm actually going to work them in later instead of worrying about them right now. So we're going to make sure they're out of my way. And then grab our 2 strands and just do your E-wrap method. This is our cast on row. And again, I'm using all pegs because I want my scarf to be wide. If you don't want it to be wide, you can do a sample to see how many pegs you want to decrease it by. I try to keep this pattern simple so that it'd be easy to adjust for different lengths. Okay, now work your way back. You can also try this with 1 strand of yarn and see if you want it more lacy, perhaps for like springtime. I'm actually calling this the just in time for spring infinity scarf. And what's going to be great is it should be easy to be able to adjust the width. Again, you should be able to, if you want it even wider, you can decide to do that by adding more pegs on, or if you want it less wide, you can do, again, decrease them. So we're just going to do our cast on. Checking on our strands underneath here. So now we have our cast on row. Our yarn should be starting back over here. And again, if you're left-handed, it's going to start differently. Go ahead and push these down out of your way. And remember, however tight you wrap is going to affect how well it knits over. So that is our first. We're doing the cast on row. Now for row 1, we're working this as a flat panel. Like I said, we're going to do a knit method. But we're not going to do the normal E-wrap that I do. We're actually just going to lay the yarn in front of the pegs and do, what's called a flat knit, where we're just laying it in front, as if we're going to purl, but we're just laying it in front. So I lay it across a couple, and then go back, and all you're going to do is knit over. Push it down if it decides to fight you. And again, we're just laying it in front of the pegs. And you can just, like I said, lay it across a couple pegs, knit them over. I don't know why this is fighting me so much. I might have to do it individually here. Okay. Like I said, I haven't worked with this loom as much as my other ones, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish this row, and all we're doing in this row is we're just doing this flat knit across. So go ahead and do that, and we'll come back for the next row. Okay, we've gone ahead and did our flat knit across the first row. Now for row 2, we're going to purl our way back. And again, purling is a simple technique. that I've used quite a bit. You bring the yarn in front, you bring it underneath here so that you can take your hook. Let me zoom in here a little bit. So that you can take your hook and go in this loop around your loom or your working yarn there and pull it up through. So it creates a nice loop that you then take off and put back on that peg. So again, take your loom, or your hook, sorry, go in that one and around to catch that one and up. So you have your loop, take it off and put it back on. And continue this to the end of this row. So go ahead and continue that till you get to the end of that row. So we completed the second row, which was our purl row. Now for the third row, we're going to go back to doing that flat knit across. So remember, with the flat knit, you're just laying it on top of the loop and knitting over. And keeping an eye if you're using a loom that has any pegs that want to pop out. Okay, that completes row 3, which is the flat method. Now I will say that after I'm done with this video, I will post this pattern on my blog, so make sure you check the info box below for a link to my blog. The next rows, number 4 through 10, we're going to actually do the drop stitch. It's a stitch that I actually really like doing, and I think it's perfect for scarves for in the summer or springtime. So what you're going to do, and I have a video specifically about the drop stitch that just talks just about that, but it's pretty simple to do, and we're going to work our way back this way. And what we're going to do for row 4, is you wrap the peg, you knit it over, then you re-wrap it, but leave it alone. You're only going to wrap it once right now. Move on to the next peg, wrap it, knit it over, re-wrap it, leave it alone, and you're going to do the same method all the way across. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to drop all these top stitches once we get to the end. Now you are going to wrap this one, but we're not going to be able to put the extra row on right now, or the extra loop. So what we're going to do is because we want to rewrap it like we normally do, but it's going to be a little hard to do because of the fact that it's not having a way to stop it. So we're going to worry about that later. Now go back through and just simply remove the top loop. Oops, without removing a peg. Like I said, I tried different methods, it just didn't want to stay in. Making sure you're only grabbing the top loop. I said that just drops them. Don't worry about pulling on them or anything, just leave them alone and push your yarn back down to do the next row. So we're going to actually, like I said, rows 4 through 10 are going to be this drop stitch. Okay, so I've got my little row counter. We just did row 4, now we're moving on to row 5. Again, doing the same method we just did. Now, like I said, we need to do this peg because we didn't drop it the first time, and I want to drop it just like I did the row before. So we're going to wrap it. Excuse me. We're going to go over here and knit this one. So we're wrapping it with the next row, basically. And that's all we're doing, is we're wrapping it once this time. Nice and gentle. Don't worry about doing it, pulling on it too tight. Just get the loop over. Okay. And it works up pretty fast with the drop stitch too. That's what I like as well. It's a great kind of beginner stitch to add a little detail to your projects. Now remember, when we get to the end of this row, we're going to have the same problem we had before with not being able to drop that last row, or last peg stitch. So we're going to do that with the next row. Okay. So like I said, you're going to knit this one, this last peg, but you're not going to be able to do the rewrap until the next row around. And again, you're going to go back and drop off those stitches. So let's go ahead and do that. Very gently. Just take the top loop off. So again, we're just continuing to go through and take that top loop off. Okay, and now we can do this one from before. And that completed row 5. Now what you're going to do is continue the same process, and keep in mind the end pegs like we talked about, until you get to row 10. So if you've got your row counter, you just completed row 5, go until you're on row 10 and then come back. So pause the video, get to row 10, and then come back for the next part. Now you should have your 10 rows complete, and you can kind of gently pull it down to see how it's doing. Like I said, it creates a nice open weave. Now what we're going to do now is we want to lock this in more in place. So now we're going to just do a simple row of the flat knit again. This is row 11. And this will help lock it in place, a little more. Okay. Just watch out for your yarn. Hopefully it doesn't get that tangled. Okay, I've got the last few rows here. Again, I'm trying to make sure that I get both strands. Okay, push them down, and that was row 11. Okay, so like I said, you can see what it's kind of doing. It's creating kind of like this open pattern. I don't know if you can see through it very well. And you could decide to do the same pattern with just one strand, see if you like it. But it's kind of making this open weave. And again, this is how wide our scarf's going to be. And I wanted to keep it very simple for just for the idea of this, so that we wouldn't get too ahead of ourselves. But now what you can do, what you're going to do is you're going to keep working those 11 stitches as many times to get to the length that you want for around your neck. Okay, so I'm going to shorten this up to like show you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep working those 11 rows over and over again until I get down to the length that I want. Then I'll come back and show you that how we're going to take this and turn it into one of those ones that are a circle all the way around, which is a pretty simple process. So okay, I've repeated the 1 through 11 rows 6 more times. I had to do one extra just to make sure it'd be big enough to go around. This is the back side, or you could use it as the front, and this is the front side. So these are the 6 times, well, technically 7 times we had to do it. You can pretty much see this is one section, so there's 1, 2. You can kind of see the sections that you do, and it does kind of make a more open weave. That's why I call it just in time for spring. You can try to do this with one strand and make it really lacy looking, or you can do 2 strands like I did here. Now we want to put this into a circle to make it more like an infinity scarf versus this way, which would just be a normal scarf. So there's 2 ways you can do it. One would be to take this off the loom and sew the 2 ends together. But I like to do whatever I can on the loom, and since I have the space in between here, I'm actually going to bring up the first row. I'm going to bring up the first row through my loom. Now if you're using a bulkier yarn, you may not be able to do this. And what you're going to do is you're going to stretch this out and reposition the loops back on the pegs. So go ahead and kind of get whatever you can out of your way and look for your loops. And it's going to be a little tricky with using 2 strands, but this way it'll be all knitted over. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because if your design is kind of messed up, it's going to kind of hide itself, so it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. You want to just try to get it as far over. So do 1 loop, and then I would say come over to the other end and find whatever loop you're going to put on this end, just so that you know that each peg will end up having a loop. Now just simply work, let me zoom in here. Now simply work trying to find the loops to put on each of the pegs. So it doesn't have to be perfect, you just want a loop on the peg. And if you can get both strands, that'd be a good idea too. So we're just looking for loops to put back on the project. If you can get the very end that you started with, that'd be great. But again, you're just trying to get some loops on the pegs to be able to join this together as a circle, as an infinity scarf would be. And really it's whatever loops work easiest for you, because this being seamed up can actually go behind you, like behind your neck, so it won't matter as much if there's any imperfections that are showing, because most people are going to be looking at the front of you anyway. Go, and once we get them all on there, see, we're getting them all on there. We got 2 more to find, and sometimes it gets tricky with the 2. You might end up having to share a loop, but I'm going to see if I can find 1 more that I can put, or if I can share this 1 loop here with this peg as well. Just be careful of any pegs that might pop out. We're going to go ahead and we're going to try to share this loop, or actually share this loop I should say, onto this peg as well. Now as you can see, we got 2 loops on all the pegs. Now go back to the beginning and just simply knit them over. This is joining the 2 ends together. So if you ever see a scarf pattern that you like, and you'd like to turn it into an infinity type scarf that's in a round, then you just simply join the 2 ends together and just adjust the width to what you would want. Like for example, this is a little wider than I would normally do for a regular scarf, but because I'm using it as an infinity scarf, I wanted it a little wider. this locks it in place and joins the two pieces. Just want to make sure, yeah, this is the outside. Okay. Because you want to make sure this is an outside and this is an outside. You're just bringing it up. If you wanted to create a weirder design, you can almost twist this before you bring it up, if that makes sense, and give it a little different dimension and see how you like that. But I also wanted to keep the pattern simple enough that you could improvise and do other stitches as well, or that this would be easy to do on a different loom because you're not counting the pegs as much. So therefore we got them all on there, so let's back up here and now push these down. And what that did is it joined this, it joined it as a panel. This is going to be what we see on our neck. And again, you'll see this picture of what this looks like. This was at the beginning of the video showing you what the end result was. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of pull our project through to make sure it's out of our way. Now I like to do is, even after I join them, is do at least one row of knit before I take off. Now you can decide to do the flat knit or the E-wrap. I'm going to quickly do the E-wrap to work my way back because I want to start casting off on this side just because that's my preference. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to E-wrap these back to the beginning before I start taking them off. Now we're ready to cast this off. We're going to do the crochet cast off and we're going to put probably 2 chains in between. So the first thing we want to do is rewrap the first peg, knit over, rewrap it one more time, knit over, move it over to the next peg, knit it over, wrap it again, wrap it one more time. So you're going to do each peg's going to get 2 extra wraps after you knit over. One. Oops. 2. One, 2. We're almost to the end. Okay. So once we get it moved over, a couple more, you're going to probably maybe need a crochet hook and you're going to want your scissors available. Okay, 1, 2, move it over. Okay, it can get a little tricky, but if you just take your time, you'll actually find yourself being able to pick up speed. And like I said, when you get to the end, you're going to need your scissors and crochet hook available. And then we just simply take this off. Okay, so 1, 2, pull it over, knit it over. You don't have to worry about doing extra loops there. Now what you want, excuse me, is your scissors. Cut yourself a tail, probably about 5 inches. Okay, grab your crochet hook. I'm just using, I think it's a G. I just want to be able to take this loop off and thread the extra yarn that we have in through it. And pull it through. Now we remove the loom. Okay, and now what you can do if you want is hide this a little more by picking a loop and just bringing it through. And doing that a couple times just to lock it in place, just something I like to do. Or you can just do a simple slip knot and pull it. And once you have that much, you can just kind of give a little trim. And there we go. We have our infinity scarf. This is the outside of it. Or you can even flip it around and have the inside as your design. So I'll put this on in a second. You'll be able to see, but it creates a big hole. And this will be our infinity scarf that you saw at the beginning of the video.